The final battle began with a single shot from Admiral Bennett's flagship. The Resolute fired its main railgun at the crash station, and the round struck true. It punched through the organic armor and disappeared into the structure. Seconds later, atmosphere began venting from the hole. All ships opened fire, Bennett commanded. The human fleet unleashed everything they had left. Damaged ships fired their last missiles. Ships running on emergency power diverted energy from life support to weapons. Every vessel, no matter how broken, contributed to the attack. The crash responded with fury. Hundreds of bioships launched from the station and swarmed toward the human fleet. Their weapons lit up space with streams of corrosive fire. But the humans had learned how to fight these creatures. They knew the patterns. They knew the weaknesses. Captain Jake Morrison coordinated the Vanguard's attack with 3 other ships. They focused their fire on a single section of the crash station, pouring round after round into the same spot. The organic structure began to crack and split. "Keep firing," Morrison ordered. "We are getting through." Lieutenant Chris Palmer was monitoring their ammunition levels. They were critically low, maybe enough for 10 more volleys. After that, the Vanguard would be defenseless. "Captain, if we keep this up, we will run out of ammunition before the station falls," Palmer warned. Morrison nodded. "Then we better make sure the station falls first." On the carrier Freedom's Light, Lieutenant Amy Hudson was launching fighters for the last time. Most of her pilots were flying damaged craft. Some had injuries, but they all volunteered for this final mission. "This is it, people," Amy said over the comm. "One more fight. One more push. Show these things what happens when they threaten innocent people." The fighters launched and immediately engaged the crashed bioships. The space battle became a chaotic mess of small craft and capital ships all fighting at close range. It was the kind of battle that required skill, courage, and a willingness to take risks. One pilot, a woman named Sarah Lopez, found her fighter badly damaged by crash fire. Her engines were failing. Her weapons were offline, but she still had control of the craft. She looked at the massive crash station ahead and made a decision. "Hudson, my bird is dead," Sarah reported calmly. "But I can still maneuver. I am going to make a run at the station." Amy understood immediately. "Sarah, no. Eject and we will pick you up." "No time," Sarah said. "Besides, I can do more damage this way." "It has been an honor flying with you, Lieutenant." Before Amy could respond, Sarah cut the channel. She aimed her dying fighter at the same section the Vanguard and other ships were attacking, the weak point that was already cracking. She pushed her engines to maximum and accelerated toward the target. The crash tried to shoot her down, but she was too small and moving too fast. Sarah's fighter slammed into the weakened section of the station at full speed. The impact was tiny compared to the size of the station, but it was enough. The crack in the armor spread. The structure began to collapse. Entire sections of the crash station started breaking away. "Direct hit on the station's support structure," Palmer reported from the Vanguard. "The whole thing is coming apart." Morrison watched as the massive crash base began to disintegrate. Pieces broke off and drifted into space. Bioships that were still docked exploded as their fuel reserves ignited. It was like watching a small moon die. "All ships pull back," Admiral Bennett ordered. "Get clear of the debris field." The human fleet retreated to a safe distance and watched the crash station's final moments. It took almost an hour for the complete destruction. When it was over, nothing remained but scattered debris and dead bioships. Bennett sat back in his command chair and allowed himself to feel the exhaustion that had been building for days. The battle was over. The Kresh were defeated. The threat to the Council was eliminated. "Get me casualty reports from all ships," he said quietly, "and start organizing search and rescue for any survivors." The reports came in slowly. 5 human ships had been destroyed. Hundreds of crew members were dead. Thousands more were injured. The fleet had paid a heavy price for the victory. But they had won. The Kresh swarm was broken. It would take them decades, maybe centuries, to rebuild, and by then the galaxy would be ready for them. Commander Lisa Grant stood on what remained of the Defiance Bridge and looked around at her crew. They were dirty, exhausted, and injured, but they were alive, and they had done something amazing. "Well done, everyone," she said. "You fought like champions. Now let us get this ship patched up enough to make it home." Lieutenant Danny Price approached her with a data pad. "Commander, Admiral Bennett is requesting all ship commanders report their status." "What should I tell him?" Lisa looked at the damage reports. The Defiant was barely functional. It would take months of repairs to make her combat-ready again. But the ship could still fly. "Tell him the Defiant is operational and ready for further orders," she said. Price smiled. "You're going to get us all killed with that attitude someday, Commander." "Maybe," Lisa agreed. "But not today." 3 weeks later, the human fleet returned to Council space. They had stopped at a nearby system to make emergency repairs and treat the wounded. Now they were coming back to report their success. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vanguard as they approached the Council capital. He had been preparing a speech in his mind, thinking about what to say when they met with the Council leaders. But when he saw what was waiting for them, the words disappeared. Every ship in Council space had come out to meet them. Thousands of vessels formed 2 lines, creating a corridor for the human fleet to pass through. As the Vanguard moved forward, the Council ships activated their running lights in a display of honor and respect. "They are saluting us," Palmer said in wonder. "The entire Council fleet is saluting us." Morrison felt a lump form in his throat. This was not what he had expected. Not from the people who had called humanity primitive just months ago. The human fleet was escorted to the Council station. When Morrison and the other commanders disembarked, they found the main hall filled with representatives from every Council species. At the center stood High Counselor Thexir. She approached Morrison and did something unprecedented. She lowered herself, bringing her crystal body down to his level in a gesture of respect. "Captain Morrison," she said, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you. You saved us when no one else would. You risked everything for people who had treated you with contempt. You have shown us what true civilization looks like." Morrison glanced at Amy Hudson, who stood beside him. She nodded slightly, encouraging him to speak. "We did what anyone should do when people are in danger," Morrison said. "We helped because it was right, not because we wanted thanks or recognition." Thexir's crystal body glowed brighter. "That is exactly why you deserve both. The Council was wrong about humanity. We judged you by your world and your past. We failed to see your potential, your compassion, your strength. We would like to correct that mistake." She gestured, and another Council member approached carrying a crystalline tablet. "Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council formally invites humanity to join us as full members. Not as junior partners, not as probationary members, but as equals. We want to learn from you. We want to share our knowledge with you. We want to build a future together." Morrison took the tablet and looked at it. It was the same application form he had submitted months ago. But this time at the bottom, every Council member had signed it, accepting humanity, welcoming them. "There is more," Thexir continued. "We would like to establish a joint military command. We need human advisors to help train our forces. We have technology and knowledge. You have experience and tactical skill. Together, we can protect the galaxy from threats like the Kresh." Morrison thought about it. Part of him wanted to refuse out of pride, to make them wait the way humanity had been made to wait. But that would be petty. That would be letting anger guide his decisions. "Earth accepts the Council's invitation," he said. "But we want it understood that we are joining as partners. We will share our military knowledge, but we also want to share our culture, our art, our music, our literature, all the things that make us human, not just our ability to fight." Counselor Quixel stepped forward. He was the one who had been most insulting during humanity's first visit. Now his crystal body seemed dimmed with shame. "Captain, I owe you a personal apology," Quixel said. "I called your people barbaric. I said you were too violent for civilized society. I was blind and foolish. You are not barbarians. You are protectors. You are heroes, and I am honored to call you my equals." Morrison extended his hand. After a moment of confusion, Quixel understood the gesture and touched his crystal appendage to Morrison's palm. It was the first handshake between a human and a Vexthari. It would not be the last. The ceremony continued for hours. Treaties were signed. Alliances were formed. Plans were made for cultural exchanges and scientific cooperation. The galaxy was entering a new era, one where humanity would play a central role. Admiral Bennett attended the ceremony but said little. He was content to let others have the spotlight. He had done his job. The fleet had succeeded. That was enough for him. But at the end of the ceremony, High Counselor Thexir approached him privately. "Admiral, I have a question." The battle for the Council capital system entered its second day. Captain Jake Morrison had not slept in 30 hours. His eyes burned with exhaustion. His muscles ached from sitting in the command chair, but he could not rest. The crash kept coming and his ship kept fighting. The Vanguard had taken damage from countless engagements. The hull was scarred with burns and impacts. 2 of the main engines were offline, but the ship was still operational, and that was all that mattered. "Captain, Admiral Bennett is ordering all ships to form up for a major push," Lieutenant Chris Palmer reported. "He wants to drive the crash completely out of the system." Morrison nodded. "Acknowledge the order. Bring us into formation." He watched as the human fleet reorganized itself. Despite the heavy fighting, despite the damage and casualties, every ship responded to Bennett's command. They moved into attack formation with the same precision they had shown at the start of the battle. Morrison understood what Bennett was doing. The crash fought like animals, using overwhelming numbers and aggression, but they had no real strategy, no adaptability. They just kept attacking in the same patterns over and over. Humanity was different. Humans could adapt. They could learn. They could change tactics in the middle of a fight. It was a skill learned from millions of years of evolution on a world that constantly tried to kill them. "All ships in position," Palmer reported. "We are ready to advance." Bennett's voice came over the fleet channel. "All vessels, this is Admiral Bennett. We have been fighting for 2 days. You are tired. Your ships are damaged. You have every reason to be proud of what you have accomplished. But the job is not done yet." Morrison listened carefully. He had served under Bennett before. The Admiral knew how to motivate people. "The Kresh think they can win through numbers," Bennett continued.
"They think if they just keep coming, we will eventually break."
"They are wrong. We are from Earth. We do not break. We do not surrender. We fight until the job is done. So let us show these things what happens when they attack people under our protection. All ships advance." The human fleet surged forward as one. Every ship opened fire simultaneously. The amount of firepower was staggering. Railgun rounds filled space like a metal storm. Missiles streaked toward the enemy in thousands. Energy weapons cut through the darkness. The Kresh formation tried to respond, but they were overwhelmed. The human attack was too coordinated, too fierce. Ship after ship exploded or went dark. The Kresh had never encountered anything like this level of organized violence. On the carrier Freedom's Light, Lieutenant Amy Hudson was launching her fighter wings for what felt like the 100th time. The pilots were exhausted, but they kept flying. They kept fighting. "All fighters, focus on the enemy command ships," Amy ordered. "Intelligence thinks they coordinate through those larger vessels. Take them out and the rest should scatter." Her fighters dove into the Kresh formation. They had learned the enemy's patterns now. They knew where the weak points were. They knew how to dodge the biological weapons. They moved with a confidence born from experience. Pilot Kevin Nash was in the thick of the fighting. His fighter had taken damage and his shields were barely functioning. But he had located one of the enemy command ships. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of a normal Kresh vessel. "Hudson, I have a shot at a command ship," Kevin reported. "But I will have to get close." "Really close? How close?" Amy asked. "Point-blank range," Kevin said. "My missiles won't arm at that distance. I will have to trigger them manually after impact." Amy understood what he was saying. Kevin was volunteering for a suicide run. If he triggered the missiles manually at point-blank range, he would not survive the explosion. "Negative, Nash," Amy said firmly. "Find another approach." "That is an order." But Kevin had already made his decision. He pushed his fighter to maximum speed and aimed straight for the command ship. The Kresh tried to shoot him down, but he was moving too fast. He slammed his fighter into the side of the enemy vessel and felt the impact through his entire body. For a moment, everything was still. Then Kevin reached over and activated the manual trigger for all his remaining missiles. He had just enough time to smile before the explosion consumed everything. The Kresh command ship broke apart in a massive fireball. The smaller enemy vessels around it suddenly stopped coordinating. They began moving randomly, firing at each other in confusion. "Nash's sacrifice worked," Amy reported, her voice thick with emotion. "The enemy formation is collapsing. All fighters press the attack." On the ground, Colonel Nina Hayes received word that the orbital battle was turning in humanity's favor, but she still had work to do. The Kresh ground forces were trapped on the surface, cut off from reinforcements, but they were not surrendering. They kept fighting with the same mindless aggression they had shown from the start. "Final push, people," Nina called out to her troops. "Let us finish this and go home." Her soldiers advanced through the ruined streets of the council capital. The fighting was house to house, room to room. It was the kind of brutal combat that required courage and skill in equal measure. Nina turned a corner and found herself face to face with 3 Kresh drones. They were between her and her squad. There was no cover, no time to call for help. Just her armor, and her weapons. She opened fire, dropping the first drone before it could react. The second one charged at her. She sidestepped its attack and shot it in the back. The third drone was smarter. It circled around looking for an opening. Nina and the Kresh drone stared at each other for a long moment. She could see intelligence in its eyes. Not human intelligence, but something close. It knew it was going to die. It just wanted to take her with it. The drone lunged. Nina did not try to dodge. Instead, she stepped forward to meet it. Her armored fist connected with the creature's head with enough force to crack its skull. The Kresh fell and Nina stood over it, breathing hard. "Colonel, are you all right?" One of her soldiers called out. "Fine," Nina replied. "Let us keep moving. We have a city to clear." The ground battle took another 6 hours, but eventually the last Kresh drone was eliminated. The council capital was secure. Nina stood in the ruins of what had been a beautiful city and felt a mixture of sadness and pride. Sadness for the destruction, pride for what her soldiers had accomplished. In orbit, the space battle was finally ending. The Kresh had been pushed out of the system. The few ships that remained were fleeing back toward the galactic rim. Admiral Bennett watched them go and knew the battle was won. But he also knew the war was not over. The Kresh would regroup. They would attack again. So Bennett made a decision that would change everything. "Prep the fleet for pursuit," he ordered. "We are going after them." His operations officer looked shocked. "Sir, the fleet is damaged. We need time to repair and resupply. Pursuing the enemy now could be dangerous. If we let them escape, they will just attack somewhere else," Bennett said. "We need to follow them back to their staging grounds and destroy their ability to make war. It is the only way to ensure the Council's safety." He opened a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Bennett. I know you are tired. I know your ships are damaged, but we have a chance to end this threat permanently. The Kresh are retreating. I am ordering a pursuit. We will follow them back to their base and destroy it. Any ship that is not combat capable can stay here and protect the Council. The rest of you form up. We are going hunting." One by one, the human ships responded, even the damaged ones, even the ones running on emergency power. They fell into formation behind the Resolute. They were ready to finish the job. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant and shook her head in amazement. Her ship was barely holding together. By all rights, she should request to stay behind. But she could not do it, not when the rest of the fleet was pushing forward. "Lieutenant Price, can we make faster than light speed?" she asked. Price checked his systems. "Barely, Commander. But yes, we can do it." "Then plot a course to follow the fleet," Lisa ordered. "The Defiant is not sitting this one out." Captain Morrison felt the same way on the Vanguard. His ship was damaged, his crew was exhausted, but the mission was not complete. The Kresh had to be stopped permanently or this would all happen again. "Set course to follow Admiral Bennett," he told Palmer, "and get me a status report on our weapons. I want to know what we have left to fight with." The human fleet jumped to faster than light speed, pursuing the retreating Kresh. They followed the enemy for 3 days, traveling deeper into unexplored space. Finally, they emerged at the edge of a massive nebula, and there, hidden in the gas and dust, was the Kresh home base. It was enormous. A space station the size of a small moon, surrounded by hundreds of bioships. This was where the swarm had been staging from. This was where they built their forces and planned their invasions. "Target located," Palmer reported from the Vanguard. "Sir, that thing is huge. How do we destroy something that big?" Morrison studied the station. It looked organic, like everything the Kresh built, which meant it probably had the same weaknesses as their ships. Vulnerable points where the armor was thinner. Critical systems that could be targeted. "We find the weak spots and we hit them hard," Morrison said. "Just like we have been doing for the past week." Admiral Bennett was thinking the same thing. The battle had been raging for 12 hours. Admiral Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Resolute, watching the tactical display. The human fleet had pushed the Kresh back from the Council defense platforms, but the enemy kept sending more ships. For every Kresh vessel they destroyed, 2 more appeared. "Admiral Battle Group 3 is requesting ammunition resupply," his operations officer reported. "They're down to 30% on railgun rounds." Bennett nodded. Dispatch supply ships, and tell Group 3 to fall back and let Group 5 take point. We need to rotate our forces or everyone will burn out. This was the kind of fighting that required patience and strategy. The Kresh had numbers on their side. Humanity had to be smarter. Bennett had studied every military conflict in Earth's history. He knew that wars were not won by the strongest army, but by the one that made fewer mistakes. "Sir, Commander Grant is reporting heavy damage to the Defiant," another officer said. "Portside has taken multiple hits. She's requesting permission to withdraw for repairs." "Denied," Bennett said firmly. "Tell Grant to shift her undamaged side toward the enemy and keep fighting. We cannot afford to reduce our numbers right now." He knew it was a hard order. The Defiant's crew was in danger. But if they pulled back, the Kresh would exploit the gap in their formation. Other ships would be destroyed. Sometimes the job of a commander was to make terrible choices. The communications officer suddenly stood up. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the Council Capital. High Counselor Thexer is requesting to speak with you." Bennett considered refusing. He was busy fighting a war to save these people. He did not have time for politics. But something made him accept the call. Maybe he wanted to see the face of the alien who had called his people primitive. Thexer's image appeared on the screen. Bennett was surprised by what he saw. The proud, arrogant counselor he remembered was gone. Instead, he saw someone who looked broken and desperate. Her crystal body was dim and cracked with stress. "Admiral Bennett," Thexer said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I am watching your fleet fight for us. I need to understand. Why did you come? We rejected your people. We insulted you. We gave you every reason to hate us." Bennett was silent for a moment. He thought about lying, about saying something diplomatic. But he was too tired for that. The battle was taking everything he had. So he told her the truth. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Your people are dying. It does not matter what you think of us. It does not matter that you called us primitive. What matters is that we can help. So we are helping. That is what civilization means to us." Thexer's body seemed to glow a little brighter. "You are more civilized than we ever were," she said softly. "We judged you by your world and your history. We never looked at who you had become. I am sorry, Admiral, for everything." "Save your apologies," Bennett said, but his voice was not unkind. "Just keep your people safe. We will handle the Kresh." The transmission ended. Bennett turned back to his tactical display. The battle was far from over. But now he felt more determined than ever. These people had learned humility the hard way. He would make sure they survived long enough to remember the lesson. On the surface of the Council capital planet, Colonel Nina Hayes was leading a different kind of battle. The Kresh had managed to land troops on the planet's surface. Ground forces were needed to stop them from reaching the civilian evacuation centers. Nina crouched behind a piece of rubble and surveyed the battlefield. The Kresh ground troops were massive creatures, each one standing 3 meters tall with armor plating and multiple limbs. They moved fast and hit hard. The Council's security forces had been swept aside in minutes. But Nina's soldiers were from Earth. They had trained in deserts and jungles. They had practiced urban warfare in the ruins of old cities. They knew how to fight in any environment against any enemy. "Second squad, move up on the left flank," Nina ordered into her comm. "Third squad, provide covering fire. Let's push these things back." Her soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. They wore powered armor that enhanced their strength and protected them from the Kresh weapons. But more importantly, they fought with a coordination that came from months of training together. A Kresh drone charged toward Nina's position. It was fast, moving on 6 legs like some kind of giant insect. Its claws could tear through steel. Its armor could stop most conventional weapons. On any other world, it would have been unstoppable. Nina aimed her rifle and fired 3 quick shots. The first 2 hit the armor and bounced off. The third found a weak point at the joint between the creature's head and body. The Kresh drone fell and did not move again. "Weak points are the joints," she called out to her troops. "Aim for where the armor connects. That is where they are vulnerable." The battle on the ground was brutal and close. The Kresh did not fear death. They just kept coming, wave after wave. But Nina's soldiers did not break. They held their positions and fought back. Private Kevin Nash found himself separated from his squad during the fighting. He was in a damaged building trying to find a way back to his unit when he heard movement behind him. He turned and saw a Kresh drone entering the building. The creature was enormous up close. Its eyes glowed with a sick yellow light. Its claws scraped against the floor as it moved toward him. Kevin raised his rifle and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The weapon had jammed. For a moment, Kevin felt fear. He was alone, cut off from help, facing a monster with a broken weapon. But then his training took over. Earth had taught humanity one important lesson. When weapons fail, you improvise. Kevin dropped his rifle and pulled his combat knife. The blade was made of advanced alloys, sharp enough to cut through almost anything. As the Kresh drone lunged at him, he dove forward instead of back. The move surprised the creature. Its claws passed over his head as he slid under its body. Kevin drove the knife up into the soft tissue under the Kresh's armor. The creature screamed, a horrible sound that made his ears ring. But he did not let go. He twisted the knife and felt the creature go limp. Kevin crawled out from under the dead Kresh and retrieved his rifle. He cleared the jam with shaking hands and moved back toward his squad's position. When he found them, they were holding off another wave of Kresh drones. "Nash, where the hell have you been?" his sergeant yelled. "Got lost, Sergeant," Kevin replied. "But I found my way back." He took his position in the line and started firing. The battle continued. Back in orbit, the space battle was reaching a critical point. The human fleet had been fighting for 18 hours straight. Crews were exhausted. Ships were running low on ammunition, but the Kresh seemed endless. Commander Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching her damage reports pile up. Her ship had taken a beating. The port side was barely functional. Life support was running on backup systems, but she kept fighting because that was what Admiral Bennett had ordered. "Commander, we have another problem," Lieutenant Danny Price said. His voice was strained. "The Kresh are launching a new attack formation. They're targeting the civilian evacuation ships." Lisa looked at her tactical display. Price was right. A group of Kresh vessels had broken off from the main battle and were heading toward the unarmed transports trying to escape the planet. If those ships were destroyed, millions of civilians would die. "All power to engines," Lisa ordered. "Plot an intercept course. We are going to stop them." "Commander, we barely have weapons left," Price protested. "We cannot fight that many ships alone." "We do not have to destroy them," Lisa said. "We just have to slow them down long enough for the civilians to escape. Now move." The Defiant turned and accelerated toward the Kresh formation. The ship was damaged and low on ammunition, but it still had one thing in abundance: the will to fight. Lisa opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. "This is Commander Grant on the Defiant. We are engaging the enemy formation targeting the evacuation ships. Any vessels that can assist, we could use the help." Within minutes, 5 other human ships broke off from the main battle and joined the Defiant. Together, they formed a defensive line between the Kresh and the civilian transports. The Kresh opened fire first. Their biological weapons tore into the human ships. The Defiant's shields collapsed completely. Hull breaches opened on multiple decks. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. But Lisa did not retreat. She ordered her weapons officer to fire everything they had left: railgun rounds, missiles, even the point defense guns. The Defiant and her sister ships poured fire into the Kresh formation. "Direct hit on the lead Kresh vessel," Price reported. "It's breaking apart. 2 more are damaged." "Keep firing," Lisa ordered. "Those transports need another 10 minutes to reach safe distance." The battle was desperate. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned. But they held their position. Every second they delayed the Kresh was another second for the civilians to escape. Finally, Price looked up with relief on his face. "The transports have jumped to faster-than-light speed. They're safe." Lisa allowed herself to breathe. "Good. Now get us out of here before we fall apart completely." The Defiant and the other ships retreated back to the main fleet. They had saved the civilians, but the cost had been high. The Defiant was barely functional. Other ships had taken heavy damage. The Council Emergency Command Center was deep underground on their capital planet. High Counselor Thexer stood in the middle of the room, her crystal body flickering with stress. Around her, screens showed the same terrible story over and over. Colony after colony was going dark. Ships were being destroyed. Billions of her people were dying. The Kresh swarm had appeared without warning. At first, the Council thought it was just a small raiding force. They sent their defense fleet to deal with it. That fleet never returned. Now the swarm was moving deeper into Council space, consuming everything in its path. Thexer had never known fear like this. The Council had been the dominant power in the galaxy for thousands of years. They had kept the peace through diplomacy and the threat of their advanced technology. But the creche did not care about diplomacy. They only wanted to feed. Any responses to our distress signals? She asked her aide. The aide, a young Vexthari named Pellis, shook his head. His crystal body was dim with despair. No, High Counselor. We have broadcast on all known frequencies. We have offered everything we can. But no one is coming. Thexer felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Shame. She remembered all the species the Council had rejected over the years, all the worlds they had deemed unworthy, all the people they had called primitive and barbaric. Now those same species were ignoring the Council's cries for help. Keep broadcasting, she said quietly. Someone must respond. Someone must help us. Counselor Quixall entered the command center. His crystal body was cracked in several places from stress. Our last defense platform around the inner colonies has fallen. The creche will reach the capital system in less than 3 days. 3 days. Thexer tried to imagine what would happen when the swarm arrived. She had seen the reports from the outer colonies. The creche did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed everything organic and moved on. Evacuate the civilian population, she ordered. Get as many people off-world as possible. Where will they go? Quixall asked. Every nearby system is under attack or already fallen. We have nowhere safe to send them. The truth of his words settled over the command center like a dark cloud. The mighty Galactic Council, the civilization that had ruled the stars for millennia, was about to die. And they would die alone, rejected by the very species they had once rejected. Then something changed on the sensor displays. High Counselor, the sensor operator called out. Her voice was shaking. I'm detecting multiple faster-than-light signatures. Large vessels. Many of them. Thexer felt a small spark of hope. Identify them. Which species is responding? The operator worked her controls quickly. Her body began to glow brighter with confusion. The signatures match human vessels. From Earth, the command center went silent. Everyone turned to look at Thexer. The humans, the primitives from the Deathworld, the species the Council had rejected just 3 months ago. They were coming. How many ships? Thexer asked. Counting now, the operator said. 20, no 30. Wait, the number keeps increasing. I'm reading over 50 human vessels. They're entering our space in formation. Quixall moved closer to Thexer. Why would they come? We insulted them. We called them barbarians. We rejected their application for membership. Thexer had no answer. She could only watch the screens as the human fleet moved closer to their position. Far above the planet, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the warship Vanguard. His ship was one of 50 Earth vessels that had just arrived in Council space. The sight that greeted them made his blood run cold. The space around the Council capital was filled with wreckage. Pieces of destroyed ships floated everywhere. Some were Council vessels, their elegant designs now twisted and broken. Others were the enemy ships, strange organic things that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Lieutenant Chris Palmer, his tactical officer, was scanning the area. Captain, I'm reading 300+ hostile contacts. They're attacking the last Council defense platforms. Morrison studied the enemy ships on his screen. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. Each one was different, but they all had the same basic structure. Thick armor made of some kind of chitin or shell material. Multiple weapon ports that fired some kind of biological projectile. And they moved in perfect coordination like insects in a hive. The creche, Morrison said quietly. So that's what a swarm looks like. They haven't noticed us yet, Palmer reported. They're completely focused on the Council platforms. Morrison activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Morrison. We're going in hot. Target the enemy formations attacking the defense platforms. Show them what happens when they mess with Earth's neighbors. Even as he gave the order, Morrison wondered if he was making a mistake. These creche had destroyed entire Council fleets. What made him think Earth's ships could do better? But then he remembered his training. He remembered what Admiral Bennett had told them before they left Earth. The Council ships were designed for show and diplomacy. Earth ships were designed to survive. Every system had backups. Every weapon had redundant power supplies. Every piece of armor was tested against the worst Earth could throw at it. The human fleet moved into attack formation. Morrison watched as his weapons officer armed all systems. Railguns charged. Missile tubes loaded. Energy shields activated. The Vanguard was ready for war. All weapons locked on target, the weapons officer reported. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Vanguard shuddered as its railguns fired. Solid metal projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, shot across space toward the Kresh formation. They hit with devastating force. The enemy ships had armor, but it was designed to stop energy weapons and biological projectiles. It had never encountered anything like Earth's kinetic weapons. 3 Kresh ships exploded on the first volley. The rest of the formation suddenly turned away from the Council platform and oriented toward the human fleet. Morrison saw weapons ports opening all along their hulls. "Here they come," Palmer said. "Enemy is returning fire." The Kresh fired back with streams of some kind of acidic compound. It hit the Vanguard's shields and began eating through them. Alarms blared on the bridge. "Shields at 70%, Palmer reported. "That stuff is corrosive. It's breaking down our shield matrix." "Rotate shield frequencies," Morrison ordered, "and launch missiles. Target their weapon ports." Hundreds of missiles streaked away from the human fleet. The Kresh tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. The missiles slammed into the enemy ships, each one carrying a nuclear warhead. Space lit up with dozens of small suns as the warheads detonated. When the light faded, at least 20 Kresh ships were gone. The rest were damaged and confused. They had never encountered an enemy that fought back this hard. "Enemy formation is breaking up," Palmer said. He sounded surprised. "They're scattering." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "They're not used to prey that bites back. Press the attack. Don't give them time to regroup." The human fleet moved forward as one. Each ship knew its role. Each captain had trained for exactly this kind of fight. They worked together with a precision that came from years of military exercises and Earth's long history of warfare. On another human ship, the carrier Freedom's Light, Lieutenant Amy Hudson was coordinating the fighter wings. She had been transferred to the carrier after the failed diplomatic mission. Now she was about to put her combat training to use. "All fighters, this is Hudson," she said over the comm. "Launch when ready. Your targets are the enemy weapon clusters. Hit them hard and get out. Don't try to be heroes." The fighters launched from the carrier's bay, small and fast compared to the massive capital ships. They were piloted by men and women who had trained in Earth's atmosphere, fighting against gravity and weather that would kill most species. Flying in space was almost easy by comparison. The fighters dove into the Kresh formation like sharks attacking prey. Their weapons were smaller than the capital ships but more precise. They targeted the sensory nodes and propulsion systems on the enemy vessels, places where the thick armor was thinner. One pilot, a young man named Kevin Nash, found himself facing down a Kresh ship that was 3 times the size of his fighter. The enemy vessel was damaged but still dangerous. It turned toward him and opened fire. Kevin twisted his fighter in a maneuver that would have been impossible in atmosphere. The Kresh weapons fire missed him by inches. He lined up his shot and fired, hitting the enemy ship's main propulsion cluster. The Kresh vessel spun out of control and crashed into another enemy ship. "Nice shot, Nash," Amy said over the comm. "All fighters, regroup and prepare for another run." The battle continued for hours. The human fleet fought with a ferocity that shocked both the Kresh and the watching council. Ships that were damaged did not retreat. They kept fighting. Fighters that ran out of ammunition made ramming runs. Soldiers prepared to board enemy vessels if necessary. This was what it meant to be from a death world. On Earth, retreating meant death. Giving up meant extinction. Humanity had learned long ago that the only way to survive was to fight with everything you had, no matter the odds. 3 months had passed since the Council rejected humanity. Commander Lisa Grant sat in her office aboard the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiant, reviewing supply reports. The work was boring but necessary. Someone had to make sure the fleet had enough food, fuel, and ammunition. The Defiant was part of Earth's growing space fleet. After the rejection, the government had decided to expand their military presence in space. Not for conquest, but for protection. If the galaxy would not accept humanity as friends, then humanity needed to be ready to stand alone. Lisa was tired. She had been working double shifts for weeks, helping to organize the new fleet expansion. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she barely noticed. The numbers on her screen were starting to blur together when her communications officer interrupted her. "Commander Grant," Lieutenant Danny Price called from the bridge. "You need to hear this. Right now." Lisa stood up quickly. Price was normally calm and professional. The urgency in his voice was unusual. She walked onto the bridge and found her entire crew staring at the main display screen. "What is it?" she asked. "We picked up a transmission," Price said. "It's from Council Space. It's a distress signal." Lisa moved closer to his station. "Play it." The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything Lisa had ever heard. It was multiple voices speaking at once, all of them panicked and desperate. The translator struggled to keep up with the chaotic message. "This is the Galactic Council emergency broadcast. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The Kresh swarm has entered Council Space. Our defenses are failing. Outer colonies have been destroyed. Casualties in the billions. We are requesting immediate military assistance from any species capable of responding." The message continued, repeating the same information over and over. But then a new part came through. "We are offering full council membership and technology sharing to any species that provides military aid. Please respond. We are desperate. The swarm is unstoppable. Please help us." Lisa felt a cold smile form on her lips. The proud council, the ones who had called humanity too primitive and violent, were now begging for help. They wanted warriors now. They wanted the very violence they had condemned. "Who or what is the Kresh swarm?" she asked. Price pulled up data on his screen. Long-range sensors picked up movement at the edge of Council Space about 2 weeks ago. The Council sent scout ships to investigate. None of them came back. Then the outer colonies went dark. No transmissions, no survivors. Whatever the Kresh are, they move fast and they don't leave anything alive. "Have any species responded to the distress call?" Lisa asked. "Not yet," Price said. "We've been monitoring all frequencies. The Council has sent this message to every known spacefaring species. So far, silence." Lisa understood why. The other species were probably afraid. Or maybe they remembered how the Council had treated them. The Council had spent centuries acting superior to everyone else. Now that they needed help, no one wanted to risk their lives for them. "Forward this to Earth Command immediately," Lisa ordered. "And keep monitoring those frequencies. I want to know if anyone responds." "Already done, Commander," Price said. Earth Command received the transmission at the same time we did. "Admiral Kyle Bennett is calling an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders." Lisa nodded. She had served under Admiral Bennett before. He was a good man, smart and careful. He would not make a decision like this lightly. 6 hours later, Lisa stood in a conference room with 50 other ship commanders. They were connected by video link from ships across the solar system. Admiral Bennett appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. "You've all heard the Council's distress signal," Bennett began. "I want to hear your thoughts. Should Earth respond?" The room erupted in arguments. Some commanders thought humanity should ignore the Council's plea. After all, the Council had rejected them. Why should humans risk their lives for aliens who considered them primitive? Others argued that this was exactly the kind of situation where humanity needed to prove themselves. If they helped the Council, maybe the galaxy would finally respect them. One commander, a woman named Nina Hayes, stood up. She was in charge of the ground forces, the soldiers who would actually fight if Earth went to war. "With respect, Admiral, I think we're asking the wrong question," Nina said. "This isn't about whether the Council deserves our help. This is about what kind of species we want to be. Do we only help people who like us? Or do we help because it's the right thing to do?" The room went quiet. Lisa found herself nodding in agreement. Nina was right. This was not about revenge or proving anything. This was about choosing who humanity wanted to be. Admiral Bennett studied Nina for a long moment. Then he looked around at all the commanders on the screens. "Colonel Hayes makes a good point," he said. "But I need to be clear about what we're discussing. The Kresh swarm destroyed the Council's outer colonies in days. They've wiped out billions of people. Their forces are described as unstoppable. If we go to help, many of you will not come back. Your crews will die fighting for people who insulted us." He paused to let that sink in. "So I'm going to put it to a vote. All commanders in favor of deploying the fleet to Council Space, raise your hand." Lisa raised her hand without hesitation. Around the room, other hands went up. One by one, almost every commander voted yes. Only 3 voted no, and Lisa could see the conflict in their faces. They were not cowards. They just could not forget the insult. Bennett nodded slowly. "The vote is clear. We deploy the fleet. But understand this. We're not going because the Council asked nicely. We're not going to prove ourselves to them. We're going because somewhere out there, Billions of innocent people are dying. Children, families, people who never did anything to hurt us. They deserve to be saved. He straightened up and his voice became commanding. All ships are to prepare for immediate deployment. I want full combat readiness. Load all weapons. Stock all supplies. We leave in 48 hours. And when we get there, I want the creche to learn something important. What's that, sir? Someone asked. Bennett's expression was hard as steel. I want them to learn what happens when you threaten people under humanity's protection. I want them to learn what a real Deathworld species can do when we stop being civilized. The meeting ended and Lisa returned to her ship. Her crew was already working, preparing the Defiant for war. They moved with efficiency and purpose. Everyone knew what was at stake. Danny Price approached her with a datapad. Supply manifest is complete, Commander. We're loaded for extended combat operations. Ammunition, medical supplies, food, everything we need. Good work, Lisa said. How's the crew's morale? Price smiled slightly. High, actually. I think people are glad we're doing this. It feels right, you know? Helping people who need it even if they don't deserve it. Lisa looked out at Earth through the viewport, their beautiful, dangerous home planet, the world that had forged humanity in fire and ice and countless struggles. The Council thought Earth made humans primitive. They were about to learn the truth. Earth had not made humanity primitive. It had made them survivors. It had made them adaptable. It had made them strong enough to help others, even when those others looked down on them. Get some rest, Lieutenant, Lisa said. In 2 days we're going to war, and we're going to show the galaxy exactly what Deathworlders can do. Price saluted and left. Lisa stayed at the viewport watching Earth slowly rotate below. Somewhere in Council space, billions of people were dying. They were scared and desperate. Their leaders had called for help and no one was answering. But humanity was coming. The species the Council had rejected was now their only hope, and Lisa intended to make sure that hope was not misplaced. The Defiant's engines hummed with power as the ship prepared for the long journey to Council space. All across Earth's fleet, the same preparations were happening. Weapons were being loaded. Fighters were being fueled. Soldiers were checking their armor and equipment. In 48 hours, the largest military force Earth had ever assembled would jump to faster-than-light speed. They would travel to a distant part of the galaxy to fight an enemy they knew almost nothing about. They would do it not for glory or recognition. They would do it because it was right. Because someone had to stand up and fight. Because that was what humans did. What they had always done since the first days on their dangerous world. The Council had sent an SOS, not knowing that Earth had been watching and waiting. The Deathworlders were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. The massive station floated in the darkness of space, its crystal towers glowing with soft blue light. Inside the main hall, Captain Jake Morrison stood perfectly still. His uniform was clean and pressed. His hands were relaxed at his sides, but inside his heart was pounding hard against his chest. Around him, the members of the Galactic Council sat on platforms that hovered above the floor. They looked down at the human delegation like judges at a trial. The tallest ones were made of living crystal that sparkled when they moved. Others were clouds of glowing gas contained in force fields. Some looked almost normal with 2 arms and 2 legs, but their skin was covered in scales or feathers. Lieutenant Amy Hudson stood next to Morrison. She was younger than him by 5 years with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been excited about this meeting for months. Now she felt that excitement turning cold in her stomach. High Counselor Thexer spoke first. Her voice came through a translator device that made it sound flat and emotionless, but the meaning was clear enough. We have reviewed your application for membership in the Galactic Council. We have studied your planet, your history, and your species. Our decision is final. Morrison waited. He kept his face calm even though he wanted to speak up and defend his people. Your planet Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, Thexer continued. The gravity is extreme. The weather is violent. Your oceans are filled with predators. Your land masses shift and crack, causing massive destruction. Disease and radiation plague your surface. No civilized species would evolve in such conditions. Another council member spoke up. This one was called Quixal, and his crystal body was darker than Thexer's. Your people are warriors. You fight each other constantly. Your entire history is written in blood. You celebrate violence in your entertainment. You build weapons that can destroy your own world. This is not civilized behavior. Amy felt her jaw clench. She wanted to argue that humans had also created beautiful art and music, that they had written poetry and built hospitals, that they had learned to cooperate and build societies based on law and justice. But Morrison had warned her not to interrupt. Morrison finally spoke. His voice was steady and respectful. "We understand your concerns. Yes, Earth is a challenging world, but that has made us strong and adaptable. Yes, we have fought wars, but we have also made peace. We have overcome our violent past and reached for the stars. We came here hoping to learn from you and share what we have learned." Thexer's crystal body seemed to glow brighter for a moment. "You misunderstand, Captain Morrison. This is not a discussion. Your application is rejected. The Galactic Council has no place for primitives from death worlds. You may return to your planet and continue your existence there, but you are not welcome among civilized species." The words hit like a physical blow. Amy saw Morrison's shoulders tighten just slightly. That was the only sign he gave that he had heard the insult. "We brought gifts," Morrison said quietly. "Art from our greatest creators. Music that has moved billions of people. Scientific discoveries that might help your people. We have no need for trinkets from barbarians," Quixel said. His tone was dismissive, almost bored. "Please leave this station within the hour. Do not return." The human delegation walked back to their ship in silence. The Horizon's Edge was a good vessel, built with the best technology Earth could produce. But compared to the elegant council ships they passed, it looked crude and blocky. It was designed to survive, not to impress. Once aboard, Morrison went straight to the bridge. Amy followed him. The rest of the crew looked up hopefully when they entered, but their faces fell when they saw Morrison's expression. "They said no," Lieutenant Danny Price said. "It was not a question." "They said more than no," Amy replied. Her voice was tight with anger. "They called us primitives. They said we were too violent, too barbaric to join their precious council." Morrison sat down in his command chair and stared at the view screen. Outside, the council station sparkled like a jewel. Beyond it, the stars stretched out forever in all directions. "Set course for Earth," he said quietly. "Take us home." As the Horizon's Edge pulled away from the station, Morrison thought about everything his species had accomplished. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues. They had learned to control fire and split the atom. They had walked on their own moon, and then reached for other stars. They had created democracy and human rights. They had built the International Space Station with multiple nations working together in peace. But none of that mattered to the Council. All they saw was Earth's violence. All they cared about was that humans came from a world that tried to kill them every single day. "Captain," Amy said softly. She had pulled up a chair next to him. "We knew this might happen. The Council has rejected other species before." "I know," Morrison said, "but I hoped we could prove ourselves different. I hoped they would see past our history and recognize what we've become." "Maybe they will," Amy said. "Someday." Morrison shook his head. "No, they've made up their minds. To them, we'll always be the violent apes from the death world. We'll never be civilized enough for their standards." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Morrison wrote his report for Earth's government. He tried to be factual and objective, but his anger kept creeping into the words. He finally gave up and just told the truth. The Council had rejected humanity not because of what they were now, but because of where they came from. When the Horizon's Edge entered Earth's orbit, Morrison looked down at his home world. From space, it looked beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. White clouds swirled in patterns. Green and brown land masses dotted the globe. It was hard to believe this was a death world, a place too dangerous for civilized life. But Morrison knew the truth. Down there, earthquakes could destroy entire cities in seconds. Volcanoes could block out the sun for years. Hurricanes could flatten everything in their path. Diseases could spread across continents. And yes, humans still fought each other sometimes, though less than they used to. Earth had made humanity strong. It had taught them to adapt and survive. It had forced them to cooperate or die, and eventually it had pushed them to reach for the stars. The Council thought that made humans primitive. Morrison was starting to think it made them something else entirely. Something the Council might need someday, whether they knew it or not. "Lieutenant Price," Morrison said, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're home. Tell them the mission failed. And tell them we need to talk about our future in this galaxy." "Yes, sir," Price said. "What do you think that future holds?" Morrison stared at Earth for a long moment before answering. "I don't know, but I know one thing for certain. We didn't come this far just to be told we're not good enough. Humanity will find its place among the stars, with or without the Council's permission.